466-4938 so they can help you complete your home. Builders Paradise, where your island dreams begin.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of Thought That Get Results. I'm Everett Weber Herbert, and as per usual, we're here every Tuesday evening with something that at least we think is of community interest and or of some concern. And if you think you have something which fits into that category, you'd like to find out how you can be a part of the program, well, why don't you drop us a line, address it to Let's Talk program in care of Vaughan Radio, P.O. Box 195, Charlestown in Nevis, or give us a call. Our numbers are 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. And by the way, those will be the numbers you'll use to be a part of this evening's discussion. Again, thank you all very much for joining us. This is your voice in the community, Thought That Get Results. With regard to your participation in the show, we encourage you to call in on numbers listed 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Here's a suggestion. You have a question or comment, perhaps you can get a pencil, piece of paper, write it down, so that you're well organized, and when you're getting on the show, you take as little time as possible so that we can accommodate as many of you as we can. We ask only, first of all, you respect yourselves and then respect others, because we will not accept anything we deem not within our broadcast standards. Again, thank you all very much for joining us. This is your voice in the community, Thought That Get Results. Tonight, Dr. Patricia Bartlett, good evening.
Good evening, Webo. Good evening to my fellow panelists. Good evening to the entire listening and viewing audiences. And if I may, I would just like to say a good evening to some special people here in Nevis. My friends, the Vanessas, my lady friend over there in Cotton Ground, Raphael, my karate friend over there in Gingerland, and of course my friends in Prospect, and then there's Black Hat and Tampine. Well, I have more friends than that, but I have to be selective tonight. So every night I'll try and say hello to some of my friends. And then, of course, my cousin Sinwick there in St. Kitts. It's good to have you in our audience tonight. And the people in the US and BVI, and Pam, Mr. Martin, and my cousin Errol. And, of course, the people in the USA, North and South America, Central America. I understand we have people all over. And of course, not to forget my husband there in the UK, and all the other people who are experiencing such crappy weather. I'm so sorry for you guys, but you're welcome home anytime. And of course, solidarity with the people in China and the other places that have been experiencing this coronavirus that now has a name. So Webo, thanks for the invitation to join you tonight.
Conrad Naya Liebert, good evening.
Good evening, Webo, and good evening to your hard-working staff here at Vaughan Radio. To my colleagues around the table, good evening, and to my friends home and abroad in Connecticut, veteran Mr. Osborne Liebert, and friends in Toronto. Welcome to this program once again. Webo, as usual, we come here to discuss the issues affecting the people, not just locally or regionally, but sometimes internationally. It's a lot going on internationally right now. It's a pleasure to be here once again, Webo, and I look forward to be a part of the debate this evening.
The Honorable Spencer Brand, good evening.
Good evening, Webo, and a very pleasant good evening to my colleagues around the table. Let me say an extra special good evening to those who are listening and viewing this edition of Let's Talk. Those persons who are here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and certainly for those who are further afield. I want to say to those families who are in mourning tonight, I want to offer them my condolences on the loss of a loved one, a colleague, or just a friend. I hope that they can remember that friend or loved one with fond memories. I want to say to those who are celebrating tonight, whether it's a birthday, an anniversary, or some accomplishment in their life, I hope that they are having a wonderful evening tonight. And to those who are in our various hospitals here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and to those who are seeking medical attention overseas, I hope that they can be up and about very quickly with the assistance of the doctors and nurses, and certainly with divine intervention as well. Webber, I want to apologize for the absence of Mr. Hobson. He's a little bit under the weather tonight, but he's generally fine. I just want to say good night to him. And thanks once again, Webber, for the invitation. I am certainly looking forward to the discussion tonight.
Edric W. Stanley, good evening.
Good evening, Webber. Good evening to my fellow panelists. Good evening to the people who regularly listen to our program, those people in St. Kitts, and of course our gracious people in Nevis, those who listen to us on the World Wide Web and throughout the Caribbean Basin, and those who are viewing us via Facebook and YouTube. We implore you to continue to listen, because we do disseminate information about St. Kitts Nevis, and of course sometimes when the topic becomes more poignant, we might go globally. And in this regard, maybe I should start off with the one in China. And I'm just saying, last week we had Dr. Nisbet here with us, and I said that China should be held fully responsible for this and thus quarantine everybody in China, with the hope that it doesn't impact the rest of the world. And those of us who are here in these small islands, I call it minus third world, they should be coughing up a lot of money for us to put in place something to ensure that if this virus gets away, it doesn't harm us, and therefore China must pay. I will have much to say on this a little later, Webber. Oh, well, I should continue in as much as our great host is not paying attention at this juncture.
Let's go to Bran. Bran, what you got?
Well, Mr. Stanley spoke about the quarantine everybody in China. That would be an interesting scenario, Mr. Stanley. But I think those of us here who are in St. Kitts and Nevis, and certainly throughout the Caribbean Basin, is very mindful of this situation in China. I believe that while we are all small island states, we are paying close attention to the development of this virus. We all know that we are a tourism destination, and we all know that with limited resources, this is something that we really do not want to see enter into the Caribbean Basin. We are hoping that it is something that can be contained and can get over it very quickly. I think that it shows, Webber, that this is a situation, even though it might happen on the other side of the world, it certainly can affect quite a large number of people in a very short period of time. It shows the interconnectivity of the globe nowadays. It shows the vast movement of our people, and it shows that even though we are in this side of the world, we really have to pay attention to what is going on the other side of the world, and the impact that it can have not only on life generally, and also on our economy. But it is a serious situation developing, and I'm hoping that even though that China is a very secretive state, I am certain that there are medical professionals who are on their way to China and on the ground in China, and I hope that the Chinese official can give them the access to the necessary information that they need to try and quell this epidemic. We really have to get a handle on it very quickly, Webber, because it is rapidly expanding. It is causing great fear and great havoc throughout the world, and I'm hoping that it can be something that we can get a hold of very quickly. There is talk about vaccine. That also is of concern. You know that this is something that will take some time to develop. I know that there are many labs throughout the world that are trying to rush these vaccine. You know, normally they take a few years, but they're trying to get it done within a very short period of time. So it is a global crisis. It is a global concern, and we here in the Caribbean are paying close attention, and we are monitoring what is transpiring on that side of the world.
Well, I bought a newspaper, as I usually do every week. This week, for last week, Friday, And the big headline was SKN. SKN is ready for the coronavirus, and I thought, wow, that's really good if we are ready for it. But I thought, this is a joke, really. Are we ready for it, Minister? You think?
Well, I know that we have put in place the necessary protocols that we hope that if we were to spot any cases, that those individuals can be quarantined and do the necessary checks and treatment and so on, do the various steps as to where those individuals would have come from. I believe, Naya, that all of the countries are doing the best they can to be as ready as they possibly can. I think that this is a situation that is rapidly changing, and even though many countries put the necessary protocols in place and feel that they are as ready as they possibly can be, things can change in a very short period of time. We all know we can prepare the best way we can, but actually when the situation actually hit the ground, you know, it tests your preparedness, it tests your readiness. I believe that we are ready based on the information that we have. I believe that we are ready based on the level of preparedness that we have put in place. And for my part, I am hoping that we would not see any cases like these in the Caribbean, not only in St. Kitts and Nevis, but in the Caribbean. I believe that it would test even the best medical system in the Caribbean, as it is testing China, as it is testing Japan and other places. These are countries that are much more advanced than we are as regards to our healthcare and as regards to disaster preparedness. But I am of the view that we are as prepared as we can be, and you know, you're prepared for the worst and hope for the best.
Okay.
I would say that based on what's been happening, you can't even tell those who might have already contracted it. And looking at it, and as I have categorized ourselves as minus third world, countries with enormous resources, and now worried about it, China has asked the United States to step up to the plate and do more. And you know, I just believe that the United States is attempting to spite China for not doing more, simply because so much is being spent on the military apparatus, and they have paid so much attention to the expansionism with reference to global politics, global domination, that this somewhat crept behind them. SARS was something before. This coronavirus is something now, and it tells you that if they have been paying attention to the human factor, the preservation of life, the sanctity of life, the goodness of life, then they will have had their monies put into this direction rather than going into the area of global domination, war machinery, war preparedness, and the like. And therefore, I am saying now to us here, which we know we are not really prepared to handle something of this magnitude. We don't have the resources. We don't have the personnel trained to understand this particular virus. And consequently, we are nowhere near. We are at the end of the totem pole in terms of the knowledge, the wisdom, the understanding, the financial resources, the lab capabilities, you name the whole 9 yards. We are not near. All we are attempting to do is to listen to the leaders of the world or the leading nations of the world as to their readiness and preparedness for this menace. And I'm saying to the rest of the world, but more particularly to us here, we should not allow anybody at all, even our own citizens, to come back here. Make sure China takes care of them out there. Don't allow them to come back here to contaminate St. Kitts and Nevis and put us all in jeopardy with reference to our health. And I'm saying that China has the resources, and let them cough up the money. They've got the space. They're 3 million something. I didn't look up the size of China, but they're 3 million square miles. They've got the space out there to, in fact, contain and quarantine everybody who contracts this. And those people who have contracted from the other countries should eventually look to China for salvation. I'll say a little more on it a little later. Webo.
Okay, I needed, and now you're waiting already?
A bit, yes.
Okay, well, let me go to the couple of other things, including, first off, we've got a by-election coming up on Nevis. By law, it should be within 30 days of that seat becoming vacant.
90.
90s, thank you, 90 days. And my count is that we are almost halfway through. So that seat became vacant effectively the 1st of January. The resignation was the 31st of December 2019. And so 3 months, January, February, and March. That suggests to me that maybe soon and very soon we should have the by-election for the St. Thomas's seat in the representative. There are some people who are not really abreast of exactly what is going on. And let me just try and explain. It is just for the one seat, and that is to replace the outgoing retired Joseph Parry, so it's just one seat. And then that person who wins that seat, therefore, after that election, will be the representative for St. Thomas's. The candidates, I think the Nevis Reformation Party has formally named a candidate to represent them. The Concerned Citizens Movement has not, as far as I know, formally named a candidate, but by the law of elimination, that's how they put it. It seems to me, but the process, yes, the process. The reason why I say law is because I have the Constitution before me, so I'm thinking law. By the process of elimination, it looks to me, according to information reaching my desk, and I always give homage for that terminology to Edric. So I borrowed, well, I have a desk of my own, but not of the magnitude of his. So I want people to know that begins with him, okay? So according to information reaching my desk, Keith Scarborough looks as if he's going to be the candidate. And I'd like to ask him an open question. How does he think he will do this time around, having now a new candidate to go up against? That's an open question. Or maybe I can put it to Mr. Brand, who is of the same party, and he can perhaps, and maybe I could frame it a different way. Mr. Brand, how well do you think your candidate will do this time, having a different opponent who does not have the experience of the person who was demitted that seat, and so on and so forth? So that's number one. Mr. Brand, you can answer a little later. Secondly, I also want to mention the fact that the federal election is June. Well, that's why I have my Constitution before me, so that I can know exactly when it is due. But traditionally, most citizens and residents count 5 calendar years. 5 calendar years since the last election will end the 14th or the 15th of February. That's in a few days. We haven't heard any tinkling of any symbol or anything as yet. So what we have to do is to look at the Constitution and see what it says in reference to the deadline for an election being called. Because everybody is asking, well, when is this thing due, right? So we will do that. And the third thing I'd like us to look at is the impact that the impeachment and also the race in the United States have not just the United States, but globally in terms of the fallout from it and all that. Because I think it is significant in terms of the fallout and how it will affect persons globally. So, Mr. Brand, let's get to that first question first, and then we can go on from there.
Yes, well, it is no secret that the Honorable Joseph Parry would have been a very formidable candidate in the St. Thomas's area for many years. The St. Thomas's area being the bedrock, so to speak, of the Nevis Reformation Party. And Mr. Parry would have represented that constituency for many years. And I want to use the microphone of One Radio to thank Mr. Parry for his contribution, not only to St. Thomas's as a representative for St. Thomas's, but also to the overall development of the island of Nevis. I believe that while we sit on different sides of the aisle, I believe that if we are honest, anyone who spent that length of time in politics certainly would have had some impact or some influence on the island. With that said, Webo, I believe that the situation on the ground this time around would be very different. I am very confident that our candidate would do extremely well in this by-election. I believe that while a lot of folks in the St. Thomas's area would have supported the NRP, I believe that the majority of those individuals would have supported Joseph Parry as an individual. And I believe that now Mr. Parry is not on the scene, I still believe that he too can still have some influence on the outcome of the election. The individual that the NRP who would have put forward is a nice young lady, not as popular as the Honorable Joseph Parry is or was, but we believe that the candidate for the CCM is going to do extremely well. We are very confident that we'll be able to arrest that seat from the NRP, which held that seat for many, many years. I want to say also, Weber, that I believe that the people of St. Thomas's ought to be minded and ought to be mindful of the fact that it is one thing to elect a representative. And I believe that this time around they need to consider very seriously and use this opportunity to elect a representative that can sit in cabinet, that can represent them in cabinet, and not necessarily just to go on the opposition benches. I feel that once you have your representative in cabinet, I believe that the demands and the wishes would be amplified a bit more for and on behalf of the people of that constituency. I've sat in cabinet, and I know that every single member of cabinet make quite a lot of overtures for their constituency, and oftentimes based on the small pie that we have to share, that sometimes some things are deferred, some things are left off. But I believe that giving that voice to a member from St. Thomas's in cabinet will all go well for the people and the constituency of St. Thomas's. I am very confident, Weber, that we will do extremely well.
The short answer, therefore. But let me ask a different question. So you're predicting or promising that you'll pick up that seat?
I cannot promise anything, Webo. I am hopeful, and I'm predicting. Promise is something that I don't know if I have the I think that only.
Okay, let me ask you
yeah.
the question this way: who will win the seat in the by-election?
Who will win the seat?
Yes.
The CCM candidate.
Oh, okay. Edric, you would have a guy like him on your team, Mr. Brand, without kind of negative,
But he came forth.
Oh, he
and
came
and
forth.
he stated what he feels.
After I kept.
Well, it is always good to know what to ask to arrive or to obtain the answer that you desire. So I think having that experience, you in fact went around it and you got from him the information that you truly wanted. And I think what he said, I believe that he believes in what he said. I believe that he believes in what he said.
Really?
I have no reason to doubt him.
Naya, what do you make of that particular elections coming up?
It's good. It's good that it's happening. Give the people another chance at deciding something. Of course, I like to see the balance, Webo. Honestly, I like to see the balance. I get a little scared when one party want to take all the seats because things changes after the election. Who is going to win that? I believe he's going to fall back to the NRP. I don't know the young lady, but I believe Mr. Parry will maintain such influence on the people of St. Thomas's. I think the NRP have done well for the people of St. Thomas's. Mr. Parry, make sure he build that road that goes through Jessup straight up to Barnesgut, and everybody will always remember that because they were always saying that under the CCM, the people of Barnesgut and Jessup and Kangwang ain't getting nothing. So Mr. Parry have left quite a profound physical impact on the people, and I believe he will have great influence in the upcoming by-election. So, to be honest with myself, I believe the NRP would take that seat back. If you ask me if I'm happy about it, I'm sad about it. I'm neutral about it. But as I say, I like to see the balance, and some message must be sent to the central authorities that all is not well. If bringing back in the NRP candidate will send that message, then I'll be happy. It's not really threatening to the government, but of course, that message would be sent. But the constituency was always NRP one, so wouldn't be too surprised if it fall back to the NRP. But again, it represents a new era. Here we have a female representing the constituency. Dr. Bartlett would be happy for that. I'm very, very happy for that. I seen some yielding taking place. I don't know how much they had to be pushed. It would be sad that really if they had to be pushed beyond reasons to really put that the female candidate, but I understand intelligent young woman, of course. She can really make a mark and open gates for other female candidates, really. So I'm happy that all this is happening. It's exercising into the democratic process, I suppose, and another opportunity for the people of St. Thomas to reassert their self, to reassert their feeling once again. I personally don't think they're about to give up on the NRP at this point in time. So it's quite interesting, Webo, but the effect and impact on everyday politics in Nevis immediate would not be really, it would not be felt that much really. Going down the road to the next NIA elections, then, you know, maybe we would be seeing a bit more, expecting a bit more fireworks from the young lady, of course, and by the time I think the NRP will get to know where they are, who they are, and what they intend to do in a general sense in the NIA upcoming election, Webo. I'm happy that it's all taking place anyway. Mr. Parry, I must congratulate him. He's a great politician, I must say. To me, a good negotiator. And many times we have got him wrong, really, a bit short-tempered as it relates to his people. But I think one thing I must crown him with, he was the man who said that he don't want to hear the secession word no more, and now nobody can speak it. CCM can't speak it. And so I crown him with that. Very powerful.
Dr. Bartlett, you wanted to weigh in?
But of course, Webo, I listened to Naya saying how, you know, happy he was, and for me to say that I'm happy would be an understatement, I'm swear. You know? I'm elated, really, and I'm not going to say any much about how I feel about it. However, to address this, the question as to who is likely, or who I think is likely to win the seat, and by the way, the lady's name is, I stand corrected, I think it's Cleon Simmons. I'm not so sure I'm pronouncing the first name correctly, but she has a name. It's not just a young lady, it's Mrs. Simmons, you know, for short. And in all that is being realistic, you know, Webo, I think she's gonna get the nod. I can't see why the people of St. Thomas's would somehow get up tomorrow morning and decide they wanted somebody in cabinet. We don't vote for people to go in cabinet. We vote for people to be members of, you know, the Nevis Island Assembly. And I don't know that that pitch that Mr. Brand made earlier is gonna, you know, sway anybody. You know, it's neither here nor there. What I have observed, though, is it seems as if when you have a safe seat, that constituency never really gets its fair share anyway. And you don't get your fair share because when your leader is, you know, in power, he can't do too much for you because people are going to say that, you know, he's been, you know, picking and choosing whom he wants to serve because he has to serve everybody. And then when you're not in power, then, you know, the people, because it's a safe seat, they think that, you know, so on the one hand, you know, you people are taking you for granted because, as one politician normally would say, fish that is already fried doesn't need any oil, you know, and in our, you know, politician I used to hear say that. So you don't get, you know, the kind of service that you should, you know, you deserve when your government is in power, and then when your government is not in power, as would have been intimated by Mr. Brand, you don't get looked after because you don't have anybody in cabinet. You know, you don't need anybody in cabinet to do the work. I think you need to have a fair system that everybody gets, you know, service. Services and policies ought to be geared towards the entire populace and not for constituencies. And I can understand Mr. Brand's position in that he thinks he needs to serve the people in St. Paul's alone, but I'm looking for him as the minister responsible for a lot of things that impact me on a daily basis to make sure that it is evenly spread for everybody. Nayab spoke about balance, and indeed you need to have balance. And I don't know that as we sit here that our Nevis Island Assembly is properly balanced. I don't know that it is properly constituted, because I think the Constitution speaks to having senators, having 3 senators, you know, and it said it shall, you know, you shall have. Somebody said that shall means maybe, I don't know, you know, I don't find shall to be an ambiguous word. I shall mean that you have to have it, but it seems like it's not properly constituted because we have 2 senators on the government side and I'm not seeing one on the opposition side, and that makes no sense because really I'm not a lawyer, you know, but if you look at the Constitution, I think the idea was that we ought to have balance in the House, and only when the people decide that everybody who they send there as representatives ought to be on one side, that you have this thing that is skewed. But I think that the framers would have had in mind that they wanted to have balance. When you go in there, you need to have somebody to say, come back, because sometimes some things, you know, put out there, and there's no one with a, you know, a view to counteract what they're saying, and sometimes the view might not be a wholesome view. For what it is worth, sometimes even for the discussion, the debates, you know, we need that. I know earlier in the year I would have heard reference made to Mr. Parry as the leader of the opposition. So I assume that when Ms. Simmons assumes the role of leader of opposition, being a lawyer, she would, you know, seek legal help on this one and make sure that a senator is, you know, appointed on her side, so that she has, you know, a little bit of a support system right there when she goes into the assembly. So having said all that, I wish Mr. whomever is going to cover about, you know, against her, Mr., because most likely he's a Mr., knowing that the CCM doesn't seem not to want, well, they seem not to want to include him, it seems. So whatever Mr. goes up against her, I'm wishing him well, but I know he's going to lose. And that's about it.
So, based on, did I get you correctly by suggesting, you're suggesting that the makeup of the Nevis Island Assembly right now is unconstitutional?
That is what I'm suggesting.
Oh, really?
Yes, that's what I'm suggesting.
Mm-hmm. Let me go on to the federal elections. That I did find the section that I was looking for in the Constitution, section 47, subsection 2. It says subject to subsection 3, Parliament, unless sooner dissolved, shall continue for 5 years from the date of the first sitting of the National Assembly after any dissolution, and shall then stand dissolved. So I think that is the section that has been under discussion of late. And if we were to find when was the first sitting of the Parliament following the last poll, last election, then we take 3 months from that. So that is where we stand in terms of the amount of time we have left in which the election must be called. Okay, so at least we can say that we have at least 3 months, and if it was 3 months after, you can add 3. So it might be in safe enough waters to say maybe we got at least another 6 months to go. That sounds about fair, Edric?
Based on the math.
Based on the math. Okay, so I know a lot of people been wondering, you know, what is happening when it is due. So we just thought we can perhaps help in that sort of way. So we got a little time legally to go, because as I said, for the most part it's been common practice that most of the times, not all, because I think the last election went over 5 calendar years.
Yes.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And whereas, and that sometimes people should not confuse practice with the law. Right? So I think, and even in recent times as well, most of the governments that were in office never used to go the 5 calendar years, because there used to be a debate or teasing by the opposition that they're afraid, they're not sure, they're not confident. And so persons, you know, we hardly used to have that in terms of over 5 calendar years. But things have changed. And in fact, even locally, I think the last, not the last one, but an election or two ago, it went over 5 calendar years as well for the local elections. It went over 5 calendar years. So persons are exercising that clause in the Constitution and playing it down to a T and going away from a custom practice.
Well, some would get another 3 months' salary for those who may be, well, the losers would have. I understand that the play sometimes.
But everybody will get
this
3 months' salary.
The question I want to ask, Weber,
Yes.
what are the advantages today in this particular situation for us to go beyond the 5 years, really?
But that is like saying that something is due to a person and he takes it and you argue what's the advantage of taking it?
Yeah, but
No?
you have said it, Webo, before it would have gathered a bit of skepticism, you know. Why not? It always reflects to me some weakness.
But you would agree it depends on whose eyes you're looking out of. Because if I got a job to do and I got 5 years or 5 years and 2 months in which to do it, right? Why would I take 4 months if I'm not finished? Because
you're gonna get a bonus.
you will say that I am weak. It makes no sense to me. Maybe it might make sense to you because you want, of course, it advantageous maybe to you. But my question to you is, if I am given a certain amount of time to get something done, and based on my own judgment, I need this amount of time to get it done, why should I negate that because you will call me weak?
Okay, well, is there any particular thing you would like to get done? That probably should have been my question, you know, when I asked the advantage, because I'm looking around and see, well, the pier in St. Kitts is finished and open. Is it the administration building? I wonder why, really, Weber, because even though it is constitutional, should it become the norm that we go beyond that 5 years, really? Or is it simply an exercise into, you know, the realities or the confines?
No, but
extremes
keep
of
in
the
mind it
Constitution?
says, it can be called at any time, right? Up to. So in other words, it could be called in 2 years, in 3 years. Matter of fact, some governments have done that, depending on whether tactically they figure, well, maybe I should go now because I'm at my strongest
Confident.
position, and so on, et cetera, et cetera. So
The thing is that the operative word is politics, and it is guided, and everything is predicated. Almost everything in this game is predicated on politics. And depending on how the political players see the game, they will execute accordingly. And consequently, when they recognize that to prolong it would be in their favor, or it gives them an advantage, they obviously would choose that structure to prolong it. If it is not in their best interest politically, then they'll call it earlier. So no matter how you turn it, it is strictly predicated on the game of politics.
put simply, you have the option or the authority to make certain choices, and you exercise it rather than ceding it to the other fellow who is just making noise. No?
Quite true. Quite true. You
Well,
got
well, I think that is why some people want fixed elections. You know, whatever date it is, it's coming up, and so there is no advantage on either side because the way it is, it seems like you would just call it when it is to your advantage. And unfortunately, that's the way the Constitution has giving us that
That's the
leeway.
That's the rule book. And you
Right. That's
would operate by the rule book until and unless it is changed.
right.
You're not going to make any changes to it.
And one of the things, it is always good to discuss and say what people think about things and so on. But always keep in mind that had it been a fixed election, fixed date, there will be those who figure that it shouldn't be fixed. Right? So you hardly will find everybody agreeing with everything. But as Edric said, at the end of the day, when the debate is over and the rule is made, you operate by it until it has changed again, and part of getting it changed again, of course, is what we do, debate and discuss.
But we could discuss all we want. The way the Constitution is, it probably would not change anytime soon, because what the people want is not necessarily reflected in what the politicians do. And we need to start getting people more engaged in the process. Decisions like these, if people really want to go to a fixed term, they should be able to do that. There should be some mechanism in place to allow people to weigh in on that issue, and not just if tomorrow the politicians feel like they want to change it, they change it, and you and I have no recourse really.
Well, I mean, we have had the tradition of calling an election before the 5-year term has expired. And that has been one of the option that has been available in this system of government. Many leaders, many political parties have used that mechanism to their advantage successfully at times. And I believe that politics is almost like especially when it comes to an election, it's almost like a cat and mouse game. To see the point and the time when the sitting government feel that the opposition may not be at their best and call an election. Some people may argue as well that calling an election before the 5-year term has expired is unconstitutional. The Constitution say you are a government for 5 years. So there can also be that argument. From my point of view, Webo, I have sat here at this microphone and I have said that I believe that the time has long passed for these small island states to think seriously about fixed date for election. I still hold that view, and I'm going to explain to you why. I believe, Webo, that any government that is doing what they commit themselves to do, they ought not to be too afraid of a date for the election. I believe if you are working on behalf of the people, if you are living up to your mandate, and if you are fulfilling your manifesto commitments, you ought not to be afraid of an election. I think that sadly and unfortunately, a lot of sitting governments and a lot of political organizations use these option and opportunity to spring an election sometimes on the people. I feel that if the general population is aware of an election, the whole country can prepare itself. Opposition, government, the whole country itself can prepare itself. I think that it takes out of the mix the kind of, at times, kind of chaos. Sometimes we have election in the heart of certain season, that in the heart of hurricane season, in the heart of Lent and
Christmas.
Easter and Christmas and so on and so forth. And I think that it disrupts the flow of things. And that
Mr.
is-
Brand, let me ask you
Yeah.
this. You're comfortable with the stipulation that this current seat, vacancy, must be filled within 90 days? You're comfortable with
if
that?
I'm comfortable with that?
Yes, the stipulation in the laws
Yeah, well, but I don't.
that this current vacancy must be filled within 90 days.
I don't have an issue with the 90-day period, Webo.
Why?
Why?
Yes.
I think that it's a time. I think it's a reasonable time for.
But it's not fixed.
No, it's not. Well, it's fixed for 90 days. The
So,
90-day period.
well, let me ask you this. When the Constitution said that an election must be held within X number of times of the dissolution of the Parliament, what's wrong with that in reference to this other time span within 90 days?
But my argument is, what I'm saying, that the Constitution gives you the time frame of 5 years. If it is that the sitting government feel that they can use the time, use the period after the first sitting of Parliament and run it all the way down to the clock, that is what is in the Constitution. That is their prerogative.
Who calls the election for this by-election?
The Premier of Nevis.
The sitting Premier?
Yes.
Okay. And he has 90 days as a span, a period of time in which he
Yes.
can do it. So in other words, within 10 days he could have called it.
Within the first day, he could have called it.
Right.
Yes.
So you have no problem with that?
With what? Him taking the time that he have taken to call it?
No. We're saying that he has an option
Yes.
of 90 days,
Yes.
and he could have called it 10 days after.
No. He can.
No,
Yeah.
once the 90 days has already been on the count, he could have done it on the 10th day.
Call the election on the 10th day?
Yes.
I'm not sure if I'm understanding your question, Weber.
Walk with me.
Yes.
Let me go over it again. The seat became vacant on the 31st of December 2019.
Yes.
The stipulation says that the election must be called, a by-election, within 90 days.
Yes.
So, starting from the 1st of January, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, the Premier says, bam, on the 10th day, elections. You have a problem with that?
He could have called the election on the 10th day, but the election would not have been held on the 10th day.
But he could have
He could have announced
it, yes.
Yes.
And you don't have a problem with that?
No, I don't have a problem with that.
And that would not surprise anybody?
It is within the 90-day period.
Good. So let me ask you this. So you have a problem with the sitting government calling the election within the 5-year or 5 year and 3 months, whatever it is, period that the Constitution stipulates?
No. Well, I am not saying that I have an issue with it. What I'm saying is that there are folks who tend to argue that and ask the question, why is it that they go over the 5 years and so on and so on.
Yeah, but you, to be fair, Mr. Brandt,
Yes.
you were speaking about your issue with it, not folks' issue. You were speaking to your issue with it and saying that you think it should be specific, correct?
Well, I have sat here and I have said that I am of the view that perhaps in St. Kitts and Nevis and in this small island we are to consider seriously having a fixed date for election. I
So
have said it.
and you're making your case, right?
Yes.
So I'm challenging you on it. I'm trying to understand. In other words, I'm trying to get you to persuade me.
That we should have fixed date for election?
Yeah.
Well, my position is that we have had elections in St. Kitts and Nevis in the heart of Lent, in Christmas, in the hurricane season, in time when I feel that perhaps may not have been the best time for election. I also believe that sitting leaders often use the option that they have to call an election at any time to spring an election on the country. And sometimes I personally feel that it shows the country in a sense of chaos. I believe, Weber, that if we have a fixed date for the election, that both government, opposition, the whole country will know exactly when the date for the election is. And it ought not to be. I understand and I appreciate the element of surprise on behalf of the sitting government. I understand it. I am not saying that it is always the best thing to do because of sometimes the impact and the effects that it can have on the country.
Well, a short thing in my view.
Where is my Ted? Because I was about to ask if he made his case. Anyway, Mr. Stanley. Oh, no, I got to get a break. Let me get a quick break and come right back. This is Talk That Get Results. Edric W. Stanley, the Honorable Spencer Brand, Conrad Nye Liebert, Dr. Patricia Bartlett. Your phone calls on 1-869-469-1616 and 1700. We'll be back after these.
Doors and windows in galore of any description, shape, and size. Builders Paradise, they've got it. Types of doors include exterior aluminum doors, exterior metal doors, fiberglass exterior doors, security doors, 6-panel interior doors, bypass mirror doors, and bifold doors, just to name a few. They also have windows just for you, such as the ever-popular security windows, Miami shutters, single-hung PVC, and awning windows. Builders Paradise is the largest supplier of doors and windows in the Federation. So visit them today at the C.A. Paul Southwell Industrial Site, St. Kitts, or call them at 466-4938 so they can help you complete your home. Builders Paradise, where your island dreams begin.
With all the power from the tower, this is the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, VON Radio, from the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Back in this episode of Talk That Get Results with Edric W. Stanley, Conrad Nye Liebert, Dr. Patricia Bartlett, and the Honorable Spencer Brand. Edric, I think I need to get back to you.
Yeah, Mr. Brand, Honorable Brand, was talking about the fixed date. I don't think that is the critical factor that determines when an election will be called. The politicians or the leaders are the ones who would make the decision, and I would guarantee you they would have already figured out what they've got in the pipeline and when that will be coming out of the pipeline as a tactical and strategic timetable for them to call an election, barring the timetable set by the Constitution. It is, of course, there. It is a legal date set, even though we don't have it yet specified in our Constitution. But even if it had been there, the politicians still looking at the Treasury completion, Treasury building completion, the pier in St. Kitts being completed, or other projects. And these are the critical factors by which and on which politicians make these decisions to, in fact, call elections. They've got 5 years to do what they have to do. It doesn't mean that they would complete what they have stated in their manifesto to do within that time period. But when the factor of completion of a particular project, which had been earmarked and viewed as something that the voters would see tangibly and act upon, that's the time that they would determine when that election will be called.
You know, I'm here thinking that in terms of that idea or thinking of the fixed date, I'm thinking, suppose you were debating cricket, and then one side decides, you know something, I think they should change the rule so that they should tell the opposing team which bowler is going to come up next. Or when each bowler, so as you start the game, you should declare that the first bowler I'll use will be Stanley, and then the next bowler will be so-and-so, be the case, and so on. Yeah, that will be interesting too, because what happens is the other team may argue is an element of surprise. If I knew when they will bring Stanley on, I'll keep back my other batsman until Stanley gets tired. You know what I'm saying?
I do understand that.
Okay,
but it's an adjustment of thinking and mind and mindset.
That's interesting, Webo. You're talking about two teams fighting with each other. But remember, the people are involved in...
Yeah, let me see if I can get this now. Hello, good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Yes.
I think I got Brand very clear. What he says, if you have a fixed date, let's say you don't call election the 1st of March or the 2nd of April. You're not going to call it on Lent. You're not going to call it on Easter. You're not going to call it on Culturama. You're not going to call it on Christmas or in the hurricane season. The fixed date will give every politician or opposition, whatever, will know the election is not going to come on these events. That is simply what Brian is trying to explain.
Right. So what happens if it falls during Culturama or Lent, or what's wrong with that? I think
So it won't be called from June to December then. That's hurricane season.
this is I don't understand. You know, so nothing is wrong with it. All I'm asking Mr. Brand to do, because I am not revealing whether I'm for it or I'm against it. What I'm saying is that when you got to make a case for something, because you see, it's just like when I keep listening and hearing people talking about why you should take people's names off the list. And then a lot of times when you get into the debate, it's for nefarious reasons. Because they feel it may or may not give somebody a particular advantage, right? So when we are discussing and debating things like these, in my view, you got to put forth your argument to sell your point, to persuade.
Yeah, but you know, I support Mr. Brand. Mr. Brand, I support you. It doesn't happen all the time, but I support you with this one because it's about fairness, you know, Webo. Because to me, the Constitution offers the sitting government some privilege, which they can use to their advantage, and that can affect the element of fairness. Because we're dealing with the electorate, you know. I mean, you draw an example with a cricket team, you know, opposing factions, but with the people, election must be fair, and I don't believe any weakness in the opposition or surge in what's going on for the government. They should use that advantage to or that opportunity to strike. I believe in the light of fairness, a fixed date election would be better, to be quite honest with you. As I say, it offers the sitting government a privilege which they can turn into an advantage that seriously affect fairness at times.
But yeah.
I understand, Webo, the advantage that is available to the leader of any country to have the date of the election walking around in their back pocket. I understand that. I understand the option that is available to them to wake up in the morning and announce a date for an election, advise the governor, dissolve parliament, and I understand the advantage of that. My bone of contention is, Webo, that I have seen, and I believe all of us have seen, the perhaps maybe the disruption, or maybe the chaos in the country when elections are called at a particular time of the year. I believe, Webo, that...
Give me an example.
Webo, I am a little uneasy to see an election around Christmas or in Lent.
Christmas meaning what? What date?
Going down the last week before the 24th, 25th, around those time down there. I think Lent is one of the most sacred time in our Christian calendar. I personally don't like the idea of having an election in Lent. That's that's my personal view.
Right, that's your personal view,
Yes.
but not everybody who are practicing Christians, you know. You know that, right?
That is true.
Okay.
It's just an
And
adjustment
so
of the mind.
there are those who would, have a preference for it to be done around that time.
That is also true.
Well, let me ask you a different question, another question, Mr. Brand.
Yes.
You think that an incumbent, such as you are now, has an advantage going into the next election? Being an incumbent, a minister, being able to campaign and say that I have done this and I have done that while in government and so on, you think that's an advantage?
Well, I always believe that an incumbent, once they perform their role and their duty, must have a slight advantage.
Even if they don't perform.
But that's not fair for you to be able to say, because you were in government, to be able to use that against me who have not been in government yet. This thing is not fair.
But Webo, Webo, this is a contest. It's a contest where both sides want to get into a particular position.
But the playing field not level.
It's
because
not level.
So let's level it out then. I'll stop the incumbent from saying these things because they have an advantage because they were in government before.
Stop them from saying that they have done this?
Yeah.
But whether the people would have put them there to do certain things and they're just giving an account of their stewardship, I don't see anything wrong with that.
But they have an advantage. So all I'm saying is, cut out that advantage and let's have a level playing field and go into the next election fairly.
Well, why don't say an advantage? What I would say...
Incumbents have lost, because they tell you what they would have done, and you're like, okay, that is what you think the priority is.
Right.
And sometimes they get thrown out,
And
because people are ready for change. And
Right.
sometimes you have new people, you have nascent political parties sometimes come on the scene and make an impact.
That's correct. And incumbents who call elections before the 5 years or any time have lost as well.
Yes.
Always.
In government.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So it is not, I mean, we are arguing as if that, this advantage, so-called advantage that a person has, gives them a guarantee.
No, Webo, I never said that.
So
I never said that that an individual or an incumbent will have that guarantee. There is no guarantee. The guarantee is up to the people.
But you were speaking about taking away the so-called advantage because it gives, as it says, an advantage. So when I ask you, level the playing field, take away the advantage, inherent advantage that an incumbent has, disallow him the opportunity from talking about what he has done in government.
That ain't gonna happen.
Huh?
That ain't gonna happen.
Well, all that I recognize here is that the incumbent has a history, maybe name recognition, and people might, for emotional reasons, just put him back there. But the opposition, through hard work, can go and propel himself and get himself elected and unseat the incumbent. So although you may have pushed Mr. Brand in a corner and he's trying to defend himself, it's not really an advantage because you know the election is going to be called, and only if you are caught flat-footed or like Rip Van Winkle fell asleep, you should not fall asleep. You know that the election is going to be called, whether it's going to be 10 days hence, 3 months hence, as the case might be. What you have to do is to prepare yourself. You're out there, and at any time it is called, you should be ready. So I don't see it as an advantage more than the historical preparation as an incumbent, what you did, your name recognition, you've been there, you have served, and people might emotively say,
let's segue into the next segment by saying that they have a fixed date in the United States and Bloomberg is running. He knew from about 50 years ago when the date of the election is, but yet he entered so late he could not
Get his name on the
get his
ballot.
name on the
all,
thing
all the ballots.
right.
Yeah.
And he knew well ahead of time, right? But he was still late. Anyway, let's go to that segment to find out what you think in terms of the impact, the impeachment, and the fallout from it can have globally, how it has basically changed things. And, you know, recently we found out that even the guy who, Manafort, not Manafort,
All of them.
right, well, all of them now, you can see they're heading for pardons, even before they've been sentenced.
Well,
And as if, well, and then people, three of the prosecutors have resigned.
more going to go resign.
Right. So what does it say? Because it seems as if nobody can stop this train.
Listen, well, let's take the first thing, Bloomberg. His people are out there and they're saying that he started late.
Too late.
In my view, that's hogwash. Bloomberg knows he has some pluses and some minuses. And the money that he's going to spend can get him to overcome what they're attempting to portray, the late start. No, late
But it
start.
was a strategic approach, because what you may well find is that persons start doing the same thing. You've got those first two states, right? The makeup of them. You know that you likely can't win those, but you have the other states. You know what that has done to Biden is make him look like a loser. When he always was going to lose those two states, and he was going to hammer them in the. But what is happening now? They're saying this guy is a loser.
But we don't know yet, you know.
But what I'm saying is that's what they're saying now,
Well,
and put him back on his heels.
Well,
Had
true.
he skipped those two states, you see what I'm saying?
yeah.
He wouldn't look like a loser, and he would just be picking up wins and getting the count. Yes, go ahead, Edric.
Based on what is happening, in my view, again, I got to go back to Bloomberg because it is very likely that Bloomberg can pick
Let me say good evening. Hello, good evening.
Hello.
Yes.
The Prime Minister keep his hands off the bell when he addressed this issue of the overseas voters. Please, let him keep his hands off the bell until when he addressed that issue. Stanley, good night.
Good night, sir, and thanks for the call. So I'm saying to you, with the Bloomberg issue, it is very likely that Bloomberg will be able to take out Trump because he got more money than everybody else. And in that regard, all he has to do is to be like the here, not in terms of losing the race, but he has to be nimble.
But out of that comes another argument that can be made if you have the thinking of Mr. Brand. What you need to do then is to level the playing field, and maybe Naya can weigh in here. These two fellas should not have so much money to put in because the other guys are running out of money. No?
Who are the two fellows you're talking about? You're talking about
Bloomberg and Trump, and what the other Steyer, the other Democrat.
you're talking about Buttigieg?
No.
Saunders.
Or Steyer.
Steyer. Yeah.
Well, listen, if you want to be in the game, you have to know how the game is played.
Yeah, but that's not creating a level playing field. Naya, come in here.
What we did,
So you think we should
Rebel,
legal?
it's not. It's not. But it's interesting. The question is, what's going to happen? I know you want to dig me on that one, and I know you guys are very strong supporters of the Democratic initiative. But Webbo, to be quite honest with you, I have not seen a candidate that can trouble Mr. Trump. Biden to me has been the weakest debater so far. I don't know, and he's full of experience. I don't know. He just cannot get his story across to the people. He's been bad. I don't know. And you know, Webo, I am non-aligned. I'm just looking at what's going on, what's coming to the television here. I really don't care as to where this thing go. But it looks like to me you guys gonna have a lot of trouble getting rid of Trump. A lot of trouble. For me, the strongest candidate there is what's his name? The old man.
Biden.
Bernie. Yes, and I understand what you're saying about the makeup of the two states. That's you know, and Biden hoped to have a bigger fireworks down where the black people live. But to me,
what do you mean bigger fireworks?
Well, you expect to get more votes down there, according to what you know I'm hearing on the television.
Who, Biden or
Biden?
Sanders.
Biden.
Oh, Biden. Okay.
Biden. But I don't see him delivering at all. I just don't see him up to I mean, he's full of experience and everything else, but judging him on the way he deliver, you know, his argument, I cannot see him getting, you know, creating any ripples at all.
But Naya, ain't that sometimes the basis of our troubles? Rolling with a person who argues good and is exciting and stuff like that, and all you get thereafter is just the same excitement?
Yes, but
so you will settle with that?
We're playing a role of listening to the debates and, of course, judging, you know, the debaters based on their ability to deliver, to convince. And,
but maybe we should go deeper than that.
And well, how much deeper can we get? I mean, they're talking about ways and means of paying for this and paying for that.
You just said it, that Biden has the experience. You said it.
Yes, Biden have the experience, but
he has not been able to articulate.
He's not been able to articulate his experience convincingly. Thank you, Pat.
So why do the polls?
I don't know, but that's what I'm saying. A lot of people is afraid to say.
So why the polls show that he will likely beat Trump?
Oh, I wasn't aware of that.
You wasn't aware of that.
I wasn't aware of that.
All the polls up to now
polls,
show.
It sounds like, you know.
All the polls up to now show nationwide in a matchup. It shows that most of the top Democratic candidates will beat him, but it shows that Biden will beat Trump by the biggest margin. Okay. And when they poll people.
But his inability to deliver.
That's a paradox.
He brought out a piece.
You just tell me I can't reply.
He brought out a piece and he mentioned that he stuttered from a very early age, yes, and he has struggled to overcome it. And this might be the reason why he is unable to deliver as articulately as he should in terms of being convincing to those people whom we want to vote for him. I'm just saying that. But
you haven't convinced me of that argument, because once you have convinced the majority, right? Why would you think that you will be able to convince everybody?
Well, you said the majority. All you wanted the majority.
So that's what he did.
All right. Well, we'll see exactly how things would pan out.
No, I think he has a problem with his strategic approach. Because
send him an email, Weber.
I don't have. You have his address?
That's easy to get.
Easy to get.
But if it's so easy to get, give me.
Well, maybe Mr. Brand might be able to get it for you. Anyway, what I'm saying to you, based on Donald Trump, there is something that might be divine, because I cannot understand how this guy is so bad.
Yet so good.
But yet he comes up with victory all the time, and he's going to pardon all these fellows who were around him.
What do you think happened in Iowa?
In terms of the
the mix-up.
well, I
Sabotage.
cannot understand again, Weber. Weber, let me say this.
Sabotage.
I try my best sometimes to do my best, but there are times when you fall up. You understand? But they know that they were supposed to have come good with this first rodeo, and they have missed the mark terribly, and it's going to come right back to haunt them. I do not know how they're going to get out of this quagmire, but Trump already got this as one of his campaign slogans, to say they have fixed it and they have failed, and therefore in November, when the votes are counted and I am not the winner, I'm going to tell you that they rigged it and I'm not coming out.
Yeah, but what I was asking you, the chaos that happened with the app or the internet, whatever it was, in Iowa, what do you think? You don't think there's something fishy about it?
It sounds fishy, Weber, but it might just be a natural mistake.
Nothing fishy.
It might just be
It
a natural
sounds
mistake.
fishy, but it may not be fishy.
Because what they're saying is that the Democratic Party should have taken control of the process rather than the state or the state. I think that's how they had it.
Let me ask this. Would it surprise you if going forward you find
Happening again?
systems crashing and all sorts of things and stuff like that?
It's
Would it
very-
surprise
Very
you?
possible.
It's very likely because listen, these are high stakes, you know. High stakes. This is for the Democratic nomination.
You remember the Mueller investigation
Yeah.
and all that, the fishiness, and so Mueller concluded it went towards helping. So
Look, there are people who are quite intelligent, and they are able to be equipped with the right type of technology to do a lot of things, a lot of damage. And
you think that'll play a part in this election coming up?
it will.
What, the
Yes.
technology?
Yeah, and in a lot of
glitches.
ways. Yes.
It could create some chaos in the system, and
They decide.
yeah, we saw the chaos. We saw the uneasiness and the uncertainty of the candidates themselves a few days after what happened in Iowa, and it left a bad taste in the whole Democratic field. And listening to Trump commenting on this, I said, this is the kind of chaos that Trump is going to revel in, because he is somebody who likes chaos, and that is where I believe he fuels his energy from. This kind of chaos amongst the Democrats is not going to help the Democrats. It is going to create a lot of doubt in a lot of the voters' mind, and I think it was either Naya or I'm not certain who it was. Trump could very well walk away with the presidency again.
It boggles me, it bothers me to see how this guy is so inept, incompetent.
But you've been saying that for close to 5 years now.
Right,
And it's not going to make a difference. Because at the end of the day, these people get talking points. These people have people who are advising them as to what you need to talk about in where you go. You can't go in a place where they don't have jobs to talk about, things that, they don't want to be engaged in. You have to go and talk jobs when you go in those places. And someone at some point would have said it's the economy is stupid, because people like to know, that everybody's working. The fundamentals, you have to get the fundamentals. And whenever your president speaks, he goes, to the extent to show every time he speaks, if you ask him what color is the sky, he says the economy is doing great. He never misses an opportunity to tell you how great the economy is doing. Notwithstanding that in the meantime, the deficit is going up. You have, over $1 trillion and, you know, in deficit spending and stuff like that, because people don't care about all that. That comes later, you know. So when you hear, and there's a double standard here, because when you hear the Democrats debating, and then you put up somebody as intelligent as, you know, let's say the best one out of that group against someone like, you know, Trump, and he has nothing substantive really to say, but he still wins, you know. So you have to sit back and look at what the people who are voting, you have to take into consideration. The people who are voting, a lot of them just bread and butter issues that, you know, they want to have addressed. They don't care. Some of them just don't understand the complexities about the social security and who is going to do what and all those nuances. Some people just don't have, you know, the attention span to deal with all that. They just want to know that you'll have a lot of jobs created. And so, you know, that's the way it goes. You know, it's a lot of, you know, you tell the people what they want to hear.
And the only problem is in terms of, by way of information, he told them what they wanted to hear in 2018. He went personally and so on, and they got one of the most historic trashing ever. So the people, you know, it's going to be very interesting. 2018.
2016.
The midterm.
Midterm, yeah.
The midterm. Yeah, they lost the House.
Well, I'm really disappointed in the senators who actually knew what the facts were and yet failed to convict Trump. But Mitt Romney had courage, real courage, to have voted his conscience. And it bugs me to have seen and to have watched the whole thing in terms of, you got all the evidence, you got all the information, and yet you're going to let this man off the hook? Why? Got to be divine intervention. I can't put it any other way. These guys decided that they're going to vote for themselves. It was a selfish act.
To me, the impeachment thing was a hoax.
Selfish act.
Honestly.
It was what?
It was a hoax.
Oh, my father. You swallow garbage?
I don't swallow garbage. I'm an observer. I'm looking at my television.
And you're saying that
look, I don't intend to follow you and your trendy stuff. You know, I personally feel that and listening to the intellectuals that obviously speak towards the impeachment, the articles was not impeachable really and truly. To me, it from, well, we all know from the beginning with them having the control of the House, that was quite possible, and the lady in the first instance said that impeachment would have destroyed the country and divide the country, and she found it necessary to use this opportunity, an election year, to come with this impeachment thing. But to me, it was not substantive. There wasn't anything of great substance to put the American president out of a job, really and truly. I mean, to inquire into corruption. The president of America can't call another leader to inquire into corruption of an American.
But Naya, you have attempted to say at some point in time.
That's my personal feeling.
Okay, let me just take this. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
I wasn't on the call, but I wonder what kind of TV Naya watches.
Fox.
I don't watch Fox at all. I don't watch Fox at all. I find it was a waste of time, this whole impeachment thing.
Naya, respectfully, I don't know. Maybe you guys have some experience in the court system. Trump blocked every chance of getting evidence against him. He used all sorts of court tactics and everything. And the witnesses that had first-hand information, they were never allowed to talk. And the Senate already made up their mind before even the case was tried. So the impeachment was solid. Even Republicans admitted that the Democrats proved the case in the House, but they didn't have the votes to take Trump out or take him down. But in November, he's going to go. Have a nice night.
I sometimes, I'm appalled with the position you would have taken in this regard. And sometimes
position that many people have taken.
And looking at even here when you would say everything is happening in St. Kitts and you can't see any transformation in
Well,
Nevis.
yes,
And
that's my
I
position.
kept saying
And
there's a piece of wool over your eye, and for some reason I do not
so
know
you
when
think I'm just a provocative guy? Do you think I'm just a
I'm saying to you
I'm here
that
to provoke who? On what?
you've
I have an
seen-
opinion.
You have an opinion, but if your opinion is condemned by so many people,
I don't. That's the least. I
So
still
many
have an
people-
opinion.
It's supported by a lot of people too, maybe not around the table here, but
And that's the thing. That's the thing. We tend to follow our kind and not to really look at things through your own eyes. I'm intelligent enough to do that, kid. You know what I'm saying?
Listen,
I mean,
I am saying
I don't
to
need
you-
to follow no one around this table here.
No, I'm not saying to follow anybody around here, but at the
And I
same
don't
time-
need to follow popular trends either.
No, you don't have to. But demonstrate that your
Right,
trend
from quotes.
at the end is correct, provable.
You got to do
practical.
the same. You got to do the same.
I have done
And
it.
we are talking about
But I'm
American
saying to you,
politics today.
the gentleman who just called, well, let me not bring him in. The majority of senators said, well, we know that he did these things, but he didn't rise to that level. And the Constitution speaks to it, that these things that he did rose to the level of impeachment and to be removed from office. And you are
They
saying
were
that
criminal. They were criminal. They were high
it
crimes.
wasn't only criminality. You had other factors there that the Constitution speaks to. And therefore, those factors that rose to that level of impeachment and the removal from office, they proved their case. They did. But those senators who decided they're not going to vote for Trump to lose his job, they were protecting their own job. That's the purpose and the reason why they did not vote to convict him. And I cannot understand how you, using the level of intelligence you say you have, not understanding what was said, what was seen, what was proven. But like I said, Trump
You
is
may not
like
understand
Trump is like the fellow whose mother held him by the heel, and the only
But
dangerous area.
You know you've been wrong about Trump ever since he came on the scene. You know you've been wrong. You say that he can only get in there through all. He would never, ever. He have proven you wrong all the way so far.
I did not say. Didn't I say that he will get there
by divine intervention, and you kept saying it, yes.
I am
You did say
fully
that.
convinced.
Yes, you did say
I'm
that.
fully convinced
Was divine intervention?
that, and it's going to occur again. Watch and you'll see.
I might sound naive, but what is divine intervention?
When the Lord says he's the devil, but he's the one I'm going to deal with.
So the Lord put
I'm
Trump there.
just saying, that's my interpretation.
Right, but I'm asking you a definitive question now. So the Lord put Trump there?
Yes.
Okay.
In all credit to Mr. Stanley, he did say it was by divine intervention because none of us could understand how it could be otherwise.
No way.
There wasn't any logical reason why people should. But of course, he did not really have the popular vote. He lost by more than 3 million votes.
Everywhere.
But
And he
notwithstanding, they were quite strategic about the way they went about it. And again, I think that is what they're going to do. You have to do your homework. You have to know where your strengths are. You have to know where your weaknesses are and work on them accordingly. And I think that they have demonstrated that they can do that. He had the capacity to do that with the people who he had around him, because he had people who were quite confident, who would come on CNN and tell you that we're going to win in these states, because they knew what their strategy was. Yes, and that is what the Democrats have to come up against again. That machinery there, and you must have respect for that. As it relates to the senators, though, I don't know that anyone expected them to go any differently. I mean, traditionally, when you would have had the impeachment of presidents, come up, usually along partisan lines. You would never really remove a president, even though he would have done things wrong. And of course, the senators didn't want everybody to know how wrong, or, you know, how much of the wrong that he did. And so they blocked a lot of critical evidence from being aired. And because it really was, you know, that's just it. They didn't want the American people to know, because they knew that that would hurt their president and their chances of retaining, you know, the presidency as Republicans. But the Democrats definitely, they have some work to do, and they have a lot of work to do. And like I said before, it's a double standard, because you have these intelligent people coming up and then, you know, and we compare them and say, okay, well, he stuttered a bit and whatever, but still the substance of the argument that they make sometimes is so, in a, let's say, a higher, you know, a higher tier, if you're going to relate the kind of debates that you're going to get from Trump. He's not the brightest guy. Everyone knows that, you know. But, you know, he's a popular guy, and what makes him popular is that he appeals to, you know, the weaknesses, you know, in some people. You know, he goes to the places where people, you know, are hurting, and they need jobs, and, you know. So, no, the senators, they voted the way I think that most people expected them to vote. Their behavior comes into question, because if you have this party that says that, you know, you're so conservative, you know, and most of them have this religious background, how could you condone the kind of behavior that has been exhibited by this present, you know, president, and smile about it, you know? But someone made a point that they're being selfish, and that is how, unfortunately, politics, you know, shakes out around here.
It was just selfishly disgusting.
To you.
Not to me only. To
may not
millions and maybe billions of people beyond the shores of the United States.
And he may not speak sugar to our ears sometime, but he's doing a good job as the President of the United States. Is he not, Mr. Stanley?
No.
The economy is doing well, but the
right.
argument has been made that the injection that he's making, as it relates to the amount of money that he's spending, you know, the trillions of dollars in deficit spending, because he's giving cuts to everybody, and of course that would stimulate, and then you have the interest rates being low, and that would stimulate most economies, and maybe we can learn a little bit from that, you know,
well,
who you should give cuts to.
I think that his approach has been different to many different presidents, especially with the case with China. I think that he have taken a very what I would call a very brutal approach with China. And even though China is, call it the star rising, Donald Trump would have taken the approach that he is probably what I would call a schoolyard bully. And he was prepared to bully China. The idea of this tariff war and trade war with China, we have seen that China has been prepared to increase some tariff and make certain adjustments and so on and so forth.
Yes.
And if it's one thing I'm going to give Donald Trump credit for, is that approach. It has been a very unconventional approach. Many presidents have tried to deal with China, and Trump have taken this approach, which I believe had brought some major spin-off to the U.S. economy and to the global economy in general, because I believe that China continues to just, you know, dump a lot of stuff on the global market, and the United States have been able to try and bully them and muzzle them certainly in a certain position. His approach has been unconventional. His approach with North Korea has been unconventional. Yeah. And like I said, we have had this situation with North and South Korea now for what, 50 years? How many years? To see a U.S. president to go and have a conversation with this brutal dictator, a lot of people, and like I said, his approach, whether you agree with it or not, whether you think that it should be done differently, I believe that he would have adopted the policy that, look, we keep trying the same old over and over again and having the same result, and I believe that he would have decided that he was going to try a much more radical approach. And credit to him. I believe that even though the results are small and incremental at times, I believe that he would have getting the attention of the Chinese and the North Koreans, and you have gotten the attention of everybody who believe that they can just continue to, quote unquote, use the United States and walk over the United States.
Yeah, but having said that though, Mr. Van, having said that though, no, but having said that, you are missing out. He has not really been very good in diplomacy, and he has caused a lot of unrest in most of the world. And even though he boasts about what successes they're having in the economy in the United States, in the same period of time, the global economy has not been doing that well. So even though you pull back China, you pull back the person in front of you, but you're not really doing much better either. And you have to look at a total picture. You still have to look at the deficit spending that they're doing now, because he's injecting a lot into the economy. And of course, he should be getting an increase in jobs with what he's putting into the economy. When Barack Obama was doing it, they were criticizing him for it. And now he's doing more of the same. So the responses and the results that he's getting now, some people argue that is what the continuum would have been. Had Barack Obama or anybody else, you could have put it on automatic pilot, because the foundation was laid for the recovery. And so he's taking credit for a lot of things, but you don't see what's going on behind the scenes, because in one breath you want to penalize China, and then when China responds in kind in terms of increasing their tariffs, he draws back. And so the matter for me, I don't think that the matter is really being resolved as it relates. Mind you, we are seeing right now, okay, the balance in trade might be a little better than it used to be. But the net effect, I don't see the global economy, benefiting from, the radical approach that you claim that you're giving him credit for.
Well, like I said, his approach has been different.
Yes.
I think my only concern though is that he would have isolated a lot of the U.S. allies, Europe, a lot of other friendly countries have now,
yeah, because they're not pulling their weight.
Well, fair enough. They have now paused, and they have now taken a step back and wonder if the U.S. word can be trusted. So, while he would have had that quote-unquote advancement and breakthrough with China and had a conversation with North Korea, there is the question and the uneasiness with the Europeans and the South American countries, and even their neighbor in Canada. I mean, some of the stuff that is now being said about him as the President of the United States. So I think that the next president, and Mr. Stanley believe that it would be Trump again. Whether it is Trump or whether it is somebody else, I believe that the U.S. would have some global fence mending to do over the next few years.
Okay, good evening. Thank you for holding.
Hello, Trevor.
Yes, you're on the air. Could you go ahead?
Did Mr. Brand just point to a breakthrough with North Korea?
No. A conversation, just a conversation, as crazy as it is.
Well, but it's not unique. Mr. Obama had said when he was running in 2008 that he would have a conversation with just about anybody without preconditions.
Yes, he did.
And they criticized him
wrongly for that by the Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the advantage that America has derived from the situation with China?
None.
So I'm not understanding you. Do you know that Mr. Trump has caused the national debt to go up by $3 trillion since he's there?
And the cost of goods coming back to the United States.
And he will win again.
Why do you think he would win again, Carla?
Nobody can beat him.
Yeah.
The Democrats don't have a sufficiently substantive candidate or charismatic candidate, and Trump will win in the Electoral College because there's a certain mentality of voter there that occupies enough constituencies, precincts, to ensure that he gets back in office.
Who do you think the Democratic candidate will be?
Who I think the Democratic candidate will be?
Yes.
I still think it will be Biden, but I don't think any one of them will be Trump.
You don't think? Do you think that the Biden team is strategic and forceful enough currently?
I think the Biden team is easing out of Iowa and New Hampshire as quickly as they can, so they could go and try to win North Carolina. But you don't have to win either of those to end up being the nominee.
Right, but the reason why I asked you that, Carla, is because I was thinking strategy-wise. I think they are not pushing back on the media, which is convincing minds that because he did not pick up those early 2 states, that he's a loser.
Well, you know, the media, and not you, I don't mean you. I mean things like CNN. CNN will take a second and amplify it into 5 days breaking news.
Right, but what I'm saying is, it is what it is, and therefore, strategically, I think they should have, Trump team would have pushed back.
No, I agree with you, Weber. I agree with you, but let me say this also. Biden may be a nice guy and so, but Biden is no Obama, eh? No. And Trump is a bad boy, and you know, the American mentality is trained to love bad boys. Okay, and he's a gangster, and they're trained to love gangsters. So he will win again. Thanks for listening.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, well, I would say that based on how Trump got the China approach, it is coming back to haunt people in the United States because they got to pay higher prices for the tariff he imposed.
But Edric, you don't see the play. The play is this, that by the time he gets to Phoenix, by the time you get to Phoenix, he'll be gone. And by the time those things are manifesting, if Mr. Brand is there, he'll own them. That's the play. You don't get it?
I get it, but I tell you, divine intervention, he's clever. And sadly, there are some, may I say, I don't want to call them foolish people, but there are people.
You define it as clever?
Well, they got some foolish, blind people who are just following Trump. And I cannot understand why they are. And for whatever reason, nobody seems to put the talking points together to convince these people who got the clout to vote in the vast numbers to ensure that Trump doesn't get back into the White House.
Well, you know what he said, I think just a couple of days ago, he tell the folks them to vote for the weakest Democrat and I said, but why would he say something like that? And I realized that Trump is trying to pick his own candidate to come up against him.
Well, it's not a one-man game. You got your opponent, and Trump obviously knows that the Democratic Party is the opponent to the Republican Party. Because in the last election, when everybody thought that Hillary would have won, the Republican Party seemingly would have been taken into the woodshed and whipped and would be sent into the doldrums. But these guys now who are actually towing the line, they're towing the line to ensure that Trump continues to be the leader, and therefore it has strengthened the Republican Party to the extent where it is now back to becoming a viable party. Because everybody thought that they would have gone into oblivion. But it's not so.
But but you have any evidence to prove what you just said? Because the last time we had a scientific test of that, it showed that they were weaker. 2018.
That the Republican Party was weaker?
Yes.
True.
So what's your evidence so in other words, you're just talking.
Many of the stalwarts of the Republican Party are no longer there because Trump has vanquished them. And Trump is now the man who's...
But you just said that hence it is stronger. So I ask you for the evidence.
The evidence is that Trump was supposed to have been convicted and would have brought the evidence of the weakness. But They have not convicted him.
That
He's
shows their
still there.
strength. They're standing together in unity.
He's still there. And with that, the party looks strong, seems strong because of the leader that they've got. And if they had destroyed the leader, they would have destroyed themselves. It's a real selfish game, a clear demonstration of selfishness.
Well, based on the polling, it suggests that Trump could be vulnerable if you're doing a nationwide polling. But when you start thinking about the Electoral College, that is where he's going to beat you. Because the thing is, and I think the caller made the point, in those areas in the back of the neck, back of the woods, those people carry, those constituencies carry weight,
But the last set of polling in those same areas you're talking about, a lot of them were tipping to Biden.
Well, it's going to be tested,
Right, but
the polls had shown that Hillary was going to win the last election too, but she didn't win.
Right,
but she had the popular vote.
But I'm talking about the place that you zeroed in on, the particular states.
I didn't say any particular ones, but
areas.
That have.
You said areas that will, so that he can win by the Electoral College.
Well, we'll see.
And those areas, what I'm saying that when they've been polled lately, it shows that Biden, I don't think it shows the others, but Biden, like Pennsylvania and those other areas, that he can get in.
Well, it depends on the firing squad, because if these guys go, as Obama has reminded them, do not subscribe to that firing squad.
What is the firing squad?
Where they destroy each other in the primary process. Because they got to deal with this gorilla.
So if they do that, they would not win.
It's very likely they would
but
not
Trump
win.
did it and won. Trump destroyed everybody in the primaries.
Trump's
and won, and then got them to. You want some evidence of it?
It's there. We all know the evidence.
Okay.
But his playbook is real. His playbook is real. It's not.
And the other side's
it's not
playbook is not real.
No.
Okay.
That's not been proven. So we have to begin to look at what Trump does and to see how these other candidates in the primary would work with one another. Bernie, we know exactly where he is.
Which is where?
In terms of being a socialist.
Okay.
The young fellow there, the Buttigieg, he looks presidential,
I like him.
And he sounds presidential.
Until you get out of Iowa and New Hampshire.
But we will see what happens when he reaches in those areas where black people are going to demonstrate their weight.
But you know what would happen? As a matter of fact, when they finish Iowa, and then them Biden team and Biden himself went on the attack, and they pointed out what he did, his history and his record with black people, he hardly could answer.
Well, we know historically.
That's what happened to him. He started to say, well.
We know historically that black people have supported the Democratic Party.
I guess it's a process of vetting, because all that is going to come back to bite them. Whatever they would have said in the past, if your opponent now doesn't bring it up, trust me, Trump's team is going to find it and they're going to use it against you.
Yeah.
So it's a process of vetting. You're going to eliminate those people who are weakest. We have people who have offended people along the way. You can't get into politics offending people. And I think it's a lesson to be learned. Sometimes it's better not to say certain things, but your record is really going to hurt you at the end of it.
May, but it may not, because
Trump said a lot of things that were supposed to have hurt him,
and those people those are the same people who are defending him.
Those are on moral issues, though.
Well, on a lot of different issues. Foreign policy. I mean, he
doesn't have a foreign policy. But he doesn't have a foreign policy.
Well,
he just
his style of foreign policy is very destructive. All right, but we will see. Like I said, it's divine intervention, and I can't put it any other way.
I don't like his foreign policy.
But he never had one to begin with, and they knew that he was weak on that, and they still elected him, and now he just goes around and just.
But the truth is, he never pretended to have one. He said America
right.
first,
That's
almost
yes,
America only.
Yes. Yeah.
And you know, when I speak of Trump of a man who is doing good for America and Americans. You know, his foreign policy, to me, I can't support him at all. So he's not like I'm hook, line, and sinker about Trump. I think he's doing a good job in America, and I salute him for that.
Good job as it relates to what, though? What are the parameters you're looking at?
As it relates to the economy?
Yeah, but at what cost?
His game plan is to destroy all
He
the
needs to pay some attention to the environment.
At what cost? At what
Pay some
cost?
attention to the environment.
His game
Well,
plan
you
is
see,
to
he's
destroy all
planting
these
3 trillion
institutions.
trees.
And with this destruction of all the institutions, he may not want to leave the White House if he is defeated in November. A dictatorial attitude he's got, and he has sent it out loud and clear.
That's the last word. Edric W. Stanley, Conrad Nye Liburd, Dr. Patricia Bartlett, the Honorable Spencer Brand. This program repeats tomorrow at 10 o'clock following the VON News Minute. Join the Honorable Mark Brantley tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock for On the Mark. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community, thought that get results. You all have a wonderful evening.
The views and opinions